Hey guys, so let's talk about navigating the weekend. I have 8 tips for you that are practical tips that you can implement. But like with most topics, I also want to create a paradigm shift for you and help you think about this and conceptualize it in a different way. So the first thing I want to say is that the weekend is hard for everyone. The weekend is always one of those topics that people usually bring up within the first week of coaching. And they bring it up as though I've never thought of it or never experienced it myself or no one else has ever found this hard. And it always makes me chuckle because absolutely everyone has difficulty on the weekend. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And like with other topics in this member's site, I want you to understand what those reasons are instead of going la 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 and pretending that they're not real things. So there's more social meals, and there's a video on why social eating is so fucking hard. That you should definitely watch. That has a lot of evolutionary biology in it that explains why social meals are harder than the ones we eat on our own. So that's definitely worth a watch if that's a problem for you. There's less structure during the weekend. For most of us, there are kids around all the time, and we're often busy with their food and their problems as well, which can be quite overwhelming and can give us a lot of brain fog. But I also want to say that bloated, tired feeling of eating shit all weekend is also hard and also sucks. So just like with most things, you have to pick your poison. And we want to keep that in mind. It's not easy just overeating all the time. So it's important to keep that in mind as well. The weekend is also important. The weekend is almost 30% of the week. If you take 2-day weekend, it's almost 30% of your entire week. So it does matter what you do. You can't just track during the week and then do whatever you want for 30% of the week, because you will probably end up at maintenance calories. And this kind of sucks because it's fun or a habit to just do whatever at the weekend. And so many people are good at tracking during the week and then suck at the weekend. If your weekend starts on, that's meant to say Friday night for most of the world. So Saturday, Sunday, obviously being the weekend, and you start on Friday night, or in Israel, Friday, Saturday, and you start on Thursday night, that is 43% of the week, okay? Almost half. So if you are overeating for almost half the week, you will almost definitely not lose weight. That little preamble, let's start with some of the tips. So tip number 1 is to superimpose the weekday eating schedule to the weekend, right? So we've talked about anchor points. We've talked about keeping it simple: breakfast, lunch, afternoon snack, and dinner. If you're one of these people who just eats just at random times during the weekend, this is part of the reason why you feel sluggish. The body likes routine and it likes to know when it's eating. And for most of us, it doesn't work to just eat whenever you're hungry, and it creates a massive amount of decision fatigue. So superimpose this weekday eating schedule into your weekend, right? Set time aside, actually decide to eat a breakfast, a lunch, afternoon snack, and dinner once you found what times work for you. Some people will say, oh no, this doesn't work for me, but you can account for changes in schedule. So if you're going to have brunch at 11 with friends, don't be difficult about this. It doesn't matter that it's at 11 instead of 12. Just have your lunch earlier and have a slightly lighter breakfast than usual so that you're hungry, comfortably hungry, a 6 out of 10 for your brunch. Likewise, if dinner is later, that's okay. Just have a slightly larger snack or a second snack to keep you going, right? These anchor points are a guide to help give you structure, and so that you're not making it up blank slate every single day, but they are not set in stone. You can be flexible around them. Tip number 2, have proper meals. Don't graze all day. So it's really important to we've talked about the importance of having proper meals, right? And you want to think of your future self here. Look after yourself the way you look after your kids. You probably don't just let your kids graze on shit all day. You probably have them actually eat proper meals. You should do the same for yourself. Why? Because you feel much better when you eat meals. Also, grazing will leave you hungry, not satisfied, overwhelmed by tracking and going well over your calories. The number of people that say to me, while I'm cooking on Friday morning, I just graze all day on the things I'm eating and I have no idea how to track that. So one solution is to try to track every little bite of food that you eat. And the other solution is to stop doing that and eat actual meals instead. Eating proper meals will leave you feeling full and satisfied and feeling in control. Okay. It's really important. If you're cooking, for example, don't just graze on all the things that you're cooking. Give yourself a proper portion and eat that instead of just picking at everything. You'll feel so much better and you'll thank yourself for doing it. Likewise, if you've made a picnic for your kids for Saturday afternoon or whatever, like so many mums will make sandwiches and fruit and this, that, and the other, and yogurts for their kids, and they don't make anything for themselves. Take an extra 5 minutes to make yourself a sandwich that you will actually enjoy eating so that you've got something to eat there instead of just grazing on all the leftovers and not feeling satisfied. Tip number 3, and I said a couple of these things in the last tip, eat the foods you actually want to eat. So again, if you're cooking something tasty for the evening and it's really tempting, instead of just taking a bite and then another bite and then another bite and going, oh God, how do I track that? Prepare yourself a portion of it and eat it and enjoy it, like rice and meatballs or chicken or whatever. Make sure there's enough for you to have another portion at lunch if it's something that you're going to enjoy eating, and it's going to be far more satisfying than, again, picking or saying, oh, I can't have this because this is for dinner or this isn't, and then eating diet food like rice cakes and cottage cheese, which is nowhere near as satisfying. If you're planning to take your kids to have an ice cream in the afternoon, plan that into your day instead of sitting there looking at them going, oh God, like it's so unfair that I can't have an ice cream, feeling restricted. Have an ice cream, count that into your calories, have an actual portion of like 2 scoops of ice cream with a cone might work out to be 400 calories, but it's much, and that you might go, whoa, that's so much, but it's much less than the accumulation of just picking a bit of chocolate here, having a bite of ice cream there, having a little bit of this, having a little bit of that. That easily adds up to way more than 400 calories across the course of the day. But it's far less satisfying. So this is where we have to be realistic with ourselves as well, that like that 400 calorie portion of cake or ice cream actually isn't that bad and can fit into a calorie budget. And it's not as bad as you think it's going to be. Whereas all those little bites, like people often think that's going to be way too much and I can't have it. But actually the reality is that you can have it, you can fit it in. Whereas all those little bites, you're thinking, oh, it's okay, it's not that big a deal, it's not that much. And it is that much at the end of the day. So this is where it's very counterintuitive and to actually fit those foods in and to have bigger portions of those fun foods to make you feel more satisfied. Tip number 4 is to pick worth it foods. So even though I'm saying, eat foods you actually want to eat, at the same time, if I can go down to the next slide, at the same time, you have to pick foods that are actually worth it for you, that you are actually going to enjoy. You can't simply overeat at every single opportunity. You can't have a big slap up breakfast and then pick up food all day long and have lunch and have ice cream in the afternoon and have a big meal and have dessert after. You can't have your cake and eat it. You have to pick which things you want to indulge in and which things are really worth it for you. So if eating your kids' leftovers isn't actually going to be enjoyable for you, but having an ice cream is, then you want to make sure that you're prioritizing things that are really worth it to you. A slice of pizza isn't actually worth it. Or if you don't like, alcohol and you don't want to have a glass of wine, don't have it for the sake of it. Don't waste your calories on things that aren't worth it to you. You have to pick so you have to pick where you're going to cut back and where you're going to splurge. You have to actually plan that out. You can't have your cake and eat it. And you want to spend your calories on the things that are really worth it to you. People sort of try to cut out all the foods that they like the most. These are the ones you want to prioritize. So if you love chocolate covered Oreos like I do, you want to have those as often as possible. Whereas I don't like other biscuits. They don't really do it for me. So I'll make sure I have a chocolate covered Oreo instead of a different type of biscuit. But also, don't eat food that you don't like or don't want to throw away. You are not a bin. Still wasted, whether it goes in the bin or if it goes into you and gets stored as body fat. Okay, so we're not living in wartime Britain here. You don't need to hoover up all the leftovers. Okay, tip number 5, have a higher calorie day. Okay, so something that I emphasize with all of you is to understand your maintenance calories. So let's take the example of 2,000 calories just as an example. And then I always give everyone their maintenance calories, or the guesstimation of their maintenance calories. From there, I calculate a target calories, which is normally a 20% deficit. So here it would be 1,600 calories. So if you go over your calories and eat 1,700 or even 1,900 calories, you are still in a deficit, okay? If you hit your maintenance, so you eat 2,000 calories that day, or if you go over your maintenance and eat, say 2,200 calories a day, you can still lose weight, on one particular day, you can still lose weight across the week or the month. Yes, it does slow you down, but you will still lose weight if you're in a substantial deficit the rest of the week. What a lot of diets do, and what a lot of clients coming into this program have done before, is to save up calories for the weekend by going 100 calories below their target, which is already usually ridiculously low, throughout the week, and then saving up an extra 700 calories to overeat. In theory, that works, but it doesn't work if you end up in a restrict and binge cycle and you're really hungry all the way through the week. You're going to blow that 700 calories well out of the water. So my approach is that you cannot save up calories for the weekend, nor can you make up for it after the weekend. You have to sacrifice your deficit for the day and just keep doing what you were doing before. Okay, so if I eat 2,200 calories on one particular day at the weekend, it's okay. I still have a deficit across the week. I just carry on as normal. Okay, that's a very different approach to how most people do this, but it's much more sustainable in the long run. No guilt, no shame, just brush it off and carry on doing what you were doing before. The difference between full-blown fuckititis and going slightly over calories is massive. So people will tend to think, oh, I've got 100 calories over my target. Oh, I've ruined everything. And then they start eating like an asshole, and then they eat 3,500 calories across the course of a day. And the difference between eating 1,700 calories and 3,500 is enormous. But people just think black and white. Oh, I've gone over my calories, so it doesn't matter. It does matter. You're putting an extra 1,000 or more calories into your body that you don't need. That matters. Every calorie matters. Okay. So it's making that shift from like black and white thinking to like, okay, well, I've gone 100 calories over target here, or 100 calories over maintenance. But in the grand scheme of things, that's not that big of a deal. Now, if we haven't already, what we will introduce at some point is something called calorie cycling, where you'll have a calorie target for, say, 6 days a week. Let's say 1,600 calories is sustainable for you. And then you'll have one higher calorie day of, say, 2,000 calories. Well, and that will be like something that we will establish together, and it will be individualized. It might be more than one higher calorie day. And it will be a day that you specifically do that and you have a different target. Why? Well, 1, because you can still lose weight that way. 2, it gives you a bit of a psychological break from dieting. 3, it stops you from going, binging and eating 3,000 calories. And 4, it shows you that just going over your calories slightly isn't that big of a deal. Number 6 is to plan the weekend ahead. So use MyFitnessPal to plan each meal ahead of time, right? Actually sit down and put it in your diary, and also account for fun things. You can also do it on a piece of paper if you prefer. Just take 2 pages, like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and just like do breakfast, lunch, afternoon snack and dinner, breakfast, lunch, and fill them in, okay? And take into account the fun stuff you're going to do. So if you're going to brunch at 11 a.m., factor that in. Don't have breakfast and lunch and then, okay, you got to fit. It sounds silly, but people do this. Or like, oh, it's not exactly an anchor point. Doesn't matter. Be a little bit flexible. Ice cream with the kids, factor it in. Plan the fun stuff too. Plan where you're going to spend that. Remember, you've only got 20% of your calories can come from fun food. So where is that going to come from? Okay, where are you going to factor that in? You can't just have 100% of your calories come from fun stuff. So we are subject to the law of physics here. Where are you going to have that? Remember, it's subject to change. Those of you who are like, oh, I hate the idea of having my whole weekend planned out ahead of time. You can still decide to have pancakes instead of, your healthy breakfast. You can still decide to have a smoothie instead of the ice cream, right? But having those calories allocated ahead of time is much easier. It's much less mental load, which mums need to reduce their mental load to decide, okay, I'll switch this for this, rather than just having a blank slate at the end of the day. Remember that some structure and some limitations and some guardrails is freedom, right? Just having a totally blank slate, eating whenever you feel like it, is not freedom. Like, we have a culture that's really, really obsessed with freedom, but too much freedom, like you don't know what to do. You end up with total decision fatigue and paralysis by analysis. Impose on yourself some structure and some limitations, and you will feel 1,000 times better than just eating whatever you want, whenever you want, every weekend. Tip number 7 is to be realistic, right? Find what actually works for you in all of this constellation of things that are possible, okay? So you can't go bonkers all weekend, every weekend, and expect to lose weight, okay? But you can't eat 1,400 calories all weekend either. It goes both ways, right? You have to find the happy medium that works for you. And if the happy medium that works for you is being in a 20% deficit all week and at maintenance calories at the weekend, well, then that is going to get you better results in the long run than trying to stick to a 20% deficit all the way through the week and then feeling deprived and feeling like you're missing out and then rebounding back the other way. Okay. So it goes both ways. You can't, I've seen so many people come into this program after having done ridiculous diets where they're on poverty calories and they're expected to do that at the weekend too. It doesn't work, okay? Or eating certain diet foods and never enjoying fun meals with friends and family. That doesn't work. Over restriction doesn't work, but no limitations whatsoever and just doing whatever you want and having as much food as you want also doesn't work, right? We have to find the happy medium that's realistic for you. I know this is a long one, but stay with me, okay? Tip number 8, we're almost there, is no matter what, get back on track the next day, right? So don't get fuckititis and bury your head in the sand. The number of people who have an avoidance issue around this stuff, that is going to get you into trouble, okay? So if you have pigged out all weekend, right, let's say, and you haven't tracked anything and you've got no idea how much you had, and now you're feeling fat and bloated, right? You will only ruin your diet or ruin all your progress if you keep eating like an asshole until Wednesday or Thursday and then snap out of it and say, okay, right, I better start tracking again. I better talk to Jen, okay? You have to get back on track on Sunday or Monday, whenever the day one of the week is for you, right? Start tracking it again on Monday. Don't leave it for a few days, okay? No matter what happened, brush it off and get back on track. Don't try and make up for it and try and cut your calories to make up for it. You can't do that. Just get back on track with your sensible calorie target. And I promise you that if you get good at getting back on track and not killing yourself over, beating yourself up over what happened at the weekend, you will lose weight. Have to remember the big picture. If you need 2,000 calories a day to maintain your weight, you need 14,000 calories across the week. Okay. And 1 pound of fat is 3,500 calories, more or less, right? So you have to eat around 11,000 calories across the week. You have to create a 3,500 calorie deficit across the week in order to be losing weight. And you can't create that deficit in one day, right? That's not even your budget for the day. You can't completely ruin that deficit in one day, okay? But you can ruin it in 4 days, right? If you just keep going. So I like to use this tire analogy, burst tire analogy. Like if you have a puncture, if you have a flat tire, you don't go, oh, fuck it, my whole car's fucked. Now I'm just going to slash the other 3 tires. No, then you just give yourself a worse problem to deal with. This is the equivalent of doing that. If you go, okay, I ate like an asshole this weekend. If I get back on track today, you can fix the problem. You can rectify it. But if you bury your head in the sand and get fuckititis, you will ruin your diet. So no matter what happens, get back on track. So to finish this little presentation up, I want to leave you with 2 reminders. 1, remember it's about habit change. So if you have always grazed and eaten like an asshole all weekend, this will be the path of least resistance for you. And it will be very easy for you to keep doing that and very hard for you to change it. Okay. Changing that habit will necessarily mean feeling that urge to eat the way that you always have done and to do what you've always done, and resisting that urge and doing something else. Okay, that is how habits are built, through action. Okay, through awareness of what is the path of least resistance, and then acting on choosing something different and acting that way. They don't change overnight because you decide, right? So we have this cultural narrative around habit change that you can just change in a second. You can just change overnight, just decide to change. You can't. You are actually going to have to feel that urge and do something else. And through doing the something else, you will change your habits. It's not easy, but this is the reality of habit change. Really, some self-care reminders. You are not a bin, right? Do not eat your kids' leftovers. Don't eat things because it's going to get thrown in the bin and you don't want it to waste. It's still wasted if it goes into you. Reminder number 2, eating crap all weekend feels shit, right? So if you're worried about overly restricting yourself and as a result, you're eating crap all weekend, right? This doesn't feel good. So actually eating less and budgeting your fun stuff I know it feels scary, but it will feel much better than eating crap all weekend. Think of your future self, right? Don't just live in the moment and do whatever feels good now. Think, what will my future self, like later on today, tomorrow, what will make me feel better then? Because sometimes we pick like what feels good in the moment, but then we're the only ones that suffer the consequences later on. So it's not like you're doing yourself, just eating too much isn't self-care. It's not noble and it doesn't make you feel good. Okay. But we do have this cultural narrative of like eat whatever you want. Don't restrict yourself in any way. But the reality is most of us know that doesn't feel good. And we are like trying to override our instincts around that rather than doing what actually feels good. Look after yourself the way you look after your kids. If you're making them sandwiches, make one for yourself, right? Don't just hoover up all the leftovers. You deserve to eat proper meals too, right? Don't just get everyone else's food ready and forget yourself. Also, give yourself structure and boundaries because it feels much better to operate within sensible boundaries and a sensible structure than it does to just have a total blank slate and total free reign. That doesn't actually feel good for any of us. So having some limitations and some boundaries and some structure is going to make you feel much better and much freer and happier in the long run. Okay, I think that's it. That was 8 tips for navigating the weekend.